So yesterday was a huge day for college football, whether it be the Oregon versus Iowa State game, the North Carolina versus A&M game, or the three massive commitments that happened. We have to break it all down, and you know we're going to right here. But before we do, as always, y'all, go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you're here. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, comment down below to let me know what you thought about everything that happened yesterday. We're over 500 subscribers now, and I want to continue to push towards 1,000, and I'd love to have y'all along for the journey. With all that being said, we have a ton to hop into today, so let's go ahead and hop into it, starting with the Oregon versus Iowa State game. This was incredibly interesting to me because Oregon was a team that I was actually kind of high on going into this year. Not in the sense that I even thought that they were going to make playoffs. I didn't have them making playoffs. I thought that the exodus of an elite quarterback last year, and even the way they ran their offense with that elite quarterback, I just didn't see how you could instantly have a first round guy leave and make the playoffs the year after. This is a very good roster, but this is a pretty young roster. You know, it's unfortunate that Kayvon Thibodeaux is only there for a little bit more because this is a roster that could really be building on something. They have a great secondary, but unfortunately, a lot of that hasn't been on display this year. I think for the most part, Oregon has actually had an incredibly disappointing season. This was a team that a lot of people thought was the Pac's bid to the playoffs. Like I said, if you watched this channel earlier this year, you'll know I've been high on Oregon, and it's because of the way they're recruiting. I really think Mario Cristobal is recruiting differently for the Pac-12, i.e. Kayvon Thibodeaux, Noah Sewell, Justin Flo. They have a really good defensive identity, and that's translating into this next class with some of the guys they have, Ty Thompson, Troy Franklin, guys that I really think that are going to come in and contribute early because, my God, they need some help right now. I don't know what's up with Oregon, but I think the offensive system they run is suboptimal. If y'all ever watched the Tua versus Justin Herbert video I did, I was really high on Justin Herbert. I said his NFL throws when he makes them are amazing. He had one of the best arms, if not the best arm, in the entire draft last year. The problem was that the system he ran at Oregon, 33% of them were screen passes. That makes it incredibly hard to evaluate somebody when you really don't know what they are going to do in a system that mirrors a more NFL-like system. Well, now we know Justin Herbert is that guy. He's having a sensational rookie year. So it kind of now points to the system, and maybe that should change. On the other side, we have Iowa State. Brock Purdy, who is being mocked as one of the top quarterbacks in this year's next draft, has had a downright down season. There's no other way to put it. Brock Purdy could have been a first-round quarterback this year, but two things happened. First, Brock Purdy's play slipped, and the play of Iowa State. You know, I don't put that so much on him. It was a COVID year. I'm not using that as a sole excuse because everybody has that same excuse, and other guys rose. But I think that it is something we should be aware of and not kill people for. And so, one, Brock Purdy's play went down, and the second thing that really hurt Brock Purdy is other guys' play was sensational. Guys like Mac Jones, Kyle Trask, who have now cemented themselves, and even like a Zach Wilson, who have surpassed a Brock Purdy. He announced that he will be going into the next year's draft. He will be staying at Iowa State this year, and I think that that's a really smart move for him because this year's first round just became so saturated with quarterbacks that it was understood that he wasn't one of them. So I think he actually made a good decision in coming back. But now let's talk about the North Carolina versus A&M game. You know, going into this, the SEC needed something. Bama is going to be Bama. They're going to handle themselves. Mississippi State won, sure, but it was against a Tulsa team that they barely won against. Florida embarrassed themselves, albeit we've already talked about that. They embarrassed themselves in speaking before the game. I don't count the loss too terribly hard against Florida because so many players weren't playing. To me, it's not so much bad Florida in that loss as it was impressive OU, and we all have to understand that both teams were missing a lot of guys. I think OU is going to be very good next year. I think Florida will be fine, but they're not going to be anywhere near where they were this year. They had all of their best guys sitting out, and it certainly showed. So the SEC needed a big victory in the bowls outside of Alabama. Like I already said, we all know Bama's going to handle itself. It was up to the other teams. And A&M came with what I think is a pretty good victory. North Carolina is a team that, look, they have some of the worst losses this season. Having that terrible loss to Florida State, who wasn't a very good team. But if you watch North Carolina play, they're one of the more exciting teams in college football to watch. Their quarterback has a ton of upside. And I think a lot of people will know what I mean when I say this. he plays like he's very young, and he is. It's not a bad thing. But when you watch his throws, he'll deliver a few throws that are just jaw-dropping. Beautiful throws, and then he'll have some other decisions that you leave yourself kind of scratching your head. And to me, it's just chalked up to youth. Remember, he's a sophomore this year, and his sophomore season was in a COVID season where he really didn't get those full reps. You know, A&M did a good job trying to come back in this game because at first it was really close, and they never really let up. A&M has got a phenomenal staple of running backs as well that we really need to look forward to. A&M's a good team. I don't know how they're going to be next year, but they're recruiting decently well. But this was a really big win. I actually thought it would be a little bit closer than it was, but A&M really took off in the fourth quarter, and it was a close game up until that point. North Carolina fans, this is a team that I would be very excited about if I was y'all. I think y'all have a ton of upside. You return so much talent. Sure, you're going to have to figure something out in the running game, but outside of that, you return a ton of talent. You're recruiting decently well. It could be better, but you're North Carolina, and this is the first few stages, and you have Mac Brown, who really looks like he knows what he's doing in this turnaround. So aside from those two bowl games, we have to talk about some massive news in recruiting. And I would like to start with one of the 3 5-stars that committed yesterday, Tristan Lay. Now, Tristan Lay is intriguing because he's one of the top tackles in all of the nation. Tristan Lay was considering teams like Alabama at first, but Alabama got way too stacked on their offensive line. And look, Tristan Lay could have gone and he probably could have found a spot on that offensive line to play. That's how talented he is. But why do it, right? Why even risk it when you know that the Tide already have 2 other 5-star tackles who are also for sure guys? I don't blame him at all for not rolling with the Tide here, and I think it's very interesting that he went with Clemson. Along this process for Tristan Lay, both LSU and OU really liked their chances. Now, LSU is intriguing right now because with Arik Gilbert transferring and with the way that their season kind of ended, I think LSU is a team we need to watch right now. I'm not going to come out right now and say, that there's smoke, there's fire, that jump ship. Nothing like that. We're nowhere near that. But it is worth watching LSU right now. Remember, this year alone, we found that Coach O doesn't have the control of the program that I think even he would like to pretend he has. And 2, Coach O has to prove that he isn't arrogant. Coach O this past year was incredibly arrogant by saying guys like Bo Pelini were better defensive coordinators than Dave Aranda, and that Joe Brady had nothing to do with it, and Steve Esminger was the one who called all the plays. That was such a bold thing to say because Esminger's been there for a while and the offense has been completely stagnant. Coach O was trying to prove it was more about him than anybody else. The next team Tristan Lay could have went to was Oklahoma. Now, I actually had thought Tristan Lay was going to go to Oklahoma, considering how they ramped up in the process. Now, that being said, Oklahoma, for whatever reason, has a knack of losing on big-time recruits, and this is only in the past few years, right down on the wire. Right? It happened with Drew Sanders, it happened with Jace McClellan, it happened with Kamar Wheaton, and now it's happened with Tristan Lay. OU, your recruiting class is still fine, but those are the little things that are going to push you from getting to the playoffs to getting to the national championship, or those recruiting wins right there. Because guys like Drew Sanders, Jace McClellan, Kamar Wheaton, and now Tristan Lay could have been major pieces on those teams. Instead, Tristan Lay is going to be going to Clemson, and he should look to be giving instant production to that Clemson Tigers offense, and I know guys like DJ Uiagalelei are ecstatic that he's there. The next commitment I want to talk about might have been the most intriguing commitment maybe of the whole process if we're just talking 5-stars. 5-star inside linebacker Terrence Lewis decided to go to Maryland. Now, this is incredible because Terrence Lewis, I believed, was an SEC, shoo-in. Before he had committed to Tennessee, it looked like he was going to go to the Alabama Crimson Tide. He surprised everybody by going to Tennessee, and Tide fans, this is around the time when that Crimson Tide class wasn't doing too well. We're talking April-ish, March-ish, where Crimson Tide was like 60th, 55th in the nation. And Terrence Lewis was really one of the first pieces to fall in that class. That had some people worried. He ended up committing to Tennessee, and nobody in the world was surprised when he decommitted from Tennessee. I mean, Tennessee has been a dumpster fire. Jeremy Pruitt, I don't believe, is the answer. Jeremy Pruitt looks to be a much better coordinator than head coach, and there's really nothing wrong with that as long as you're self-aware. You can be the most successful coordinator in the world, and you'll still be remembered. It's not a head coach, but it is a coordinator, and as long as you're self-aware, you can be successful. the Jeremy Pruitt experiment isn't really working. Tennessee used to be one of Alabama's biggest rivalries, and now it's just a laughingstock game where the Tide pretty much will light their cigars before the game begins. But Terrence Lewis, when he decommitted from Tennessee, like I said, nobody's surprised. Everybody's surprised when he ends up committing to Maryland. Maryland did this last year too, if y'all remember, with 5-star wide receiver Raheem Jarrett. Raheem Jarrett looked to be a shoo-in for LSU, and instead on National Signing Day flipped to Maryland. Coach Locksley has something going there. Make no mistake about it, I'm not saying Maryland is going to be in contention for the Big Ten championship or even sniffing playoffs next year. But that's a team to watch because he's starting to build it the way he likes. He's laying the foundation for something that could be special. It's the same thing I said last year about North Carolina, and it's the same thing I said in the offseason about Oregon, where I predicted I don't think Oregon goes anywhere this season. I don't think they make playoffs, but they're laying the foundation in recruiting to be successful outside of that. So this is a massive, massive get for Maryland, and what a job by Coach Locksley. The very last thing we want to talk about before we leave is the #1 player in the nation, Korey Foreman, commits to USC. Down to the wire, it looked like Korey Foreman could have gone to LSU, Clemson, or USC. He was once a Clemson commit. However, I don't think it surprises anybody when he doesn't go to Clemson. I don't think that the policy at Clemson sat well with him because he wanted to take more visits, and Dabo and Clemson, not that this is a bad thing, have a policy that they don't let that happen. If you're committed to them and you take another visit, you're going to get in trouble. I don't think that sat well with Korey Foreman because he actually wanted to go through his recruiting process, and how can you blame the kid? I don't think either side is to blame here. I don't blame Clemson, even though I disagree with the rule, for having your convictions. If that's important to you, go ahead and make the rule, and at least they're upfront about it, right? So the recruits can kind of gauge whether or not this is an environment they want to be in. For that, I applaud you, Clemson, and it was no issue when he decommitted. Dabo never said anything like that. But Korey Foreman ended up picking the USC Trojans, and this is massive news. USC fans, y'all have been getting dragged in the recruiting process for a while now. We had the Brew McCoy saga, and even though it ended up working out for you, there was plenty of drama to go along with it. JT Daniels comes there, and he ends up transferring out, and even though Slovis is looking fantastic, that's still a hit. And then you have last season Bryce Young decommitting and going to Alabama, and he turns out to be the second best player in the nation. You know, even through all that, you had guys like Justin Flo, DJ Uiagalelei not go to USC and leave the state of California. Whereas this year, USC honed in and got the #1 player in the nation, weak side defensive end, Korey Foreman. This kid is electric. He is surefire. 24/7 Sports comps him to Cameron Jordan, and I could not agree with the comp more. This kid is a freak of nature and someone that looks to really help this USC team, and what a win for the USC staff. This is one of the biggest wins in the past few years for them because they, like OU, have had a habit of having a big-time commit leave California. Now watch Rayshawn Davis, the inside linebacker that was committed to LSU, watch him to USC. I have a sneaky suspicion that now that this class for USC has picked up a little steam with the Korey Foreman commit, they could be nabbing a few other guys in the last few weeks before this is all said and done. That's it from us. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Once again, like the video because this really helps small YouTubers like me. Guys, if you enjoyed the video, drop a comment down below to let me know what you thought. That's it. See ya.